Part 2. After My Death, the Villain Blackened Again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 11. Something in the outer room hit the ground, crackling, and Yuandi's voice returned to calm. Yan Ji knelt beside the two palace people. At this moment they were trembling with their heads down, and they almost got into the seam. The was a little excited. That guy is talking about you. You might as well just don't go back and shut it up. It's kept in the palace, and men depend on the night to get along. Yanj finally couldn't stand its endless self-righteous slander, and returned to it. You, a bird, are you sure you can understand human feelings? The chicken was angry. I'm a bird, not a bird, but you don't understand the feelings of human beings. I don't understand, do you understand? The chicken was so angry that his hair was exploded. It only had one mouth, and he could not argue with the tree with his mouth full, so he simply turned his head to point his furry fart/egg to the song, and generally vented his anger seeds. Yuandi, who was in a bad mood, didn't know where he went in the afternoon, and then at night Yan ate his meal before showing up in front of Yan's song. He has probably adjusted his emotions. When he looked at the song, his face was mild. Perhaps because he didn't bask in the sun, his skin was fair. When he smiled slightly, he gave the illusion of warmth and jade. Putting the white fat jade jar next to Yanj's bed, he said with a smile, "Look, is it a good match for this chess piece?" The white fat jade jar contains the piece of chess that Yuandi won in the academy. Yanj held the jade jar in his hand and looked at it, admiring it. This jar is perfect for that piece of chess, it looks like a whole set. Yuandi laughed, and he knew that to please a woman like Yanj, it was better to use a chess jar with those fancy jewelry. I also have a matching chessboard. Yuandi clapped his hands and asked the palace person to lift the chessboard up. As soon as Yan Ji's eyes lighted, she would sit up with one hand on the bed. Yuandi rushed forward and put a backrest on her, leaving her half lying. "Your Majesty, do you have time? Why don't we talk about this game and try this chessboard?" Yuandi smiled and said, "Yes." This time, Yuandi has been waiting for a long time. He had never won a showdown with Yanj, and it was only before. Now that he knows that Yanj is a woman, how can he be willing to lose in the hands of a woman? Both were staring at the chessboard intently, and the end of the game was late at night. Yan Ji did not win this time, she lost a son of Yuandi. As a victor, Yuandi did not have the slightest joy. Even at this moment, he was still a little angry. He fixed his eyes on Yanj, trying to find a trace of deliberate traces on Yanj's face. Master Leffen said that you can control your winning and losing freely. You didn't believe it before, but now, suddenly, he thinks he looks better than you. Much more transparent. In the end, Yuandi's words even brought a trace of wrath. He probably thought that Yanj deliberately let him go because of his emperor status. Yan Ji's eyes met him unavoidably. "Your Majesty's absurdity, I will lose today if I am weak in the past few days. If your Majesty is still free tomorrow, I would like to make another round." "There is no such thing as Master Fan said, but there is no problem with winning." This arrogant and proud tone made Yuandi slightly surprised, and the next moment he laughed and laughed. "Okay, I have agreed with you. After my death, the villain blackened again." Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 12. The chicken murmured, "Obviously you are deliberate, and you are pretending to be weak and would. Every time you fulfill your wish for someone, won't you just lie to it to achieve your goal? Yanj Lenghung, learn more, so as to avoid being boiled and eaten one day." The wanted to ridicule the satire, but was ridiculed by the sang song. His nose blasted, and his feathers trembled. At the end, he poked his head into his wing and raised his fart/strand to face speech song. The second Japanese emperor came again in the evening. The medical girl was changing the medicine, and across the bead curtain, Yuandi was sitting on the couch. He slightly tilted his head and looked at the beautiful woman in the bead curtain. Sitting straight and strong, she didn't say a word when changing the dressing. This behavior was not like a woman at all. He remembered the scars on her, could not help but wonder, why are there so many scars on you? Practice martial arts, you have to suffer this kind of suffering, Yanj said. These scars can be regarded as my brilliant record. Yuandi chuckled, why a woman, how can you fight so hard? The words were silent. Yuandi teased, why, don't you say you still want to be a man? I have to fight, Yanj said, because I am a woman, I have to fight harder. Yuandi heard the bitter meaning in her words, and he was curious and asked, where is your family? Are your parents and friends still there? Can you teach such a strange woman? Your parents must be very powerful characters. My mother died early, and I have no memory of her, Yanj replied. My father doesn't care about me, and I rarely see him once a year. Yuandi opened his mouth and did not know how to answer. Instead, Yanj continued, but I have to thank him. If it were not for him, I would not have lived the way I am now. You can live better, Yuandi said, if you stay in the palace, I will treat you well. That box of words did not respond. But Emperor Yuan felt that Yan Ji should have loosened his attitude. A woman running outside is like duckweed on the water. He thought that she also expected someone to build a shelter for her from the wind and rain. Tomorrow is your birthday, it is also the day of his ritual. He is the emperor of a country. The ritual of ritual is also of great significance to him. He opened the curtain and walked in. If today I lost to you, what will I give you today as a gift? If you lose, naturally you will give me a birthday gift. Yan Ji's eyes were slightly raised, his chin held up slightly and proudly. Your Majesty needs to prepare a gift early. Today, I slept for a day, and I have developed my spirit. Yuandi looked at Yanj with a smile. He suddenly remembered the cat that his sister had raised as a child. The cat was always arrogant and lazily squatting on the steps and squinting to bask in the sun. No one except the younger sister teased him. He had wanted to reach out and touch the cat's head, but he was bitten by the little animal. Took a sip. Okay, I've got my presents ready, and I'm waiting for a chance to send you. Yan Ji slightly raised her head, staring at Yuandi's hand on her head, her face confused. Your Majesty, I haven't washed my hair for several days. Is there something on my hair? Yuandi ==. Yuandi, who never stopped, rubbed Yanj's soft hair, which felt surprisingly good. He coughed softly, and said, well. This time it's Yanj's turn to force her hair. Every day, the palace people help to scrub it. Why is there something dirty? Is the hair very dirty? Or should I wash my head first? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Weipang. Chapter 13. Nothing is more frightening than Yandi's hand on her head. There is always an urge to chop that hand. Of course, the head does not need to be washed. The palace people swarmed up to set up the chessboard, and helped Yanj to lie in a more comfortable position. Yuandi saw that the song was still in a daze, and asked, what's wrong? Yanj shook his head quickly, it's all right. She doesn't think she has anything to do, but she feels weird today. She lay for a few days. Although her chest injury was not great, she was able to get out of bed and walk. However, Yuandi took care of her like a porcelain doll, and she was so delicate for so many days. This time, the chessboard didn't have the force of a storm, and the two were not as tense as they were last night. As the Emperor Yuan settled, he went siped like a gossip, if you come out for so many days, your family will not. Are you worried? Do you need someone to say something to your house? Yan Ji also followed Lozi. I am my home, where I am, where my home is. Yuandi laughed when he heard what he said, and what he admired most was the unrestrained nature of Yanj. "What a pity, it's a woman. Who taught you martial arts?" "My master," Yanj replied. "My father didn't see him all the year round as a kid. I secretly ran out to be a beggar for a while, but later met my master. He didn't know that I was a baby girl, and accepted me as a student my martial arts, teach me to write." "Did your master later know your girl's identity?" "I see," Yanj said. "When I came to Gishui for the first time, I didn't understand myself and thought I was going to die. My master thought I had eaten the stomach, anorectal, and bleeding. I never thought I was a girl. He threw me down the mountain and never saw me again. He said that the men passed the men but not the women, so he was driven out of the men." Yuandi expected this result, but listening to the words slowly said this, his heart was still a little unpleasant, and he couldn't help but said, "Your master is unreasonable. My master is most fond of wine and meat. He has never eaten wine and meat since then. He said he broke the door and was punished, so he will not drink wine or meat in his life." Yuandi suddenly had nothing to say. "Rather," Yanj said, "my master has died. If he is alive, how good he is. I always hope that he can see what I am today. I think I am the most productive of all his apprentices. He should regret it. Drive me out of the house. This is like the regret that Jinyi cannot return to his hometown." When listening to the ego and proud tone of Yanj, Emperor Yuan couldn't help laughing. "Where are you going?" Yanji heard Yuandi glanced at Yuandi obliquely. "I'm terrible. If I do say those things I do, it will surely surprise your majesty." Yuandi looked at her prideful appearance, with an inexplicable feeling in her heart, and laughed ridiculously. "Oh, speak it out, see if you can be scared." Emperor Yuan thinks that, like Yanj's temperament, he thinks that the most extraordinary thing is to fight the house and rob the rich to help the poor. Yanj shook his head, still not to say, "Lest your majesty orders someone to arrest me." Yuandi laughed, and he guessed that the song might still be a certain person on the government wanted list. Although he didn't ask any more, he made up his mind to ask someone to check if there were any people on the government wanted list. This time, Yanj failed to win as she wished. Not only did she lose, she also lost 2 sons. The dissatisfied pushed the pawn, and Yanj said indignantly, "How can I lose? Come on, this game is warming up, we will win or lose in the next game. After my death, the villain blackened again." Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 14. Because of anger, Yan Ji's face was a little flushed. Although she is not a beauty, she has a kind of pride that a beauty can't match. Even if the facial features are not soft, you can see that it is rare and beautiful in the eyes of Yuandi. Su was accustomed to the fat beauty in the harem, and he would have such a thought for her unusual woman. Yuandi was fully aware of the incident. He knew that the woman Yanj had a fatal attraction to him now, so he had no intention of letting her leave the palace. He is an emperor, strong and used to it, and even if his thoughts are not strong, he will not let himself go. In the second game, Yanj Kankan pulled back his face and lost a half. "Keep going," Yan Ji seemed to see hope, and his voice was a little excited. Yuandi knew that it was not too early. She was injured, and because of the drug domineering, she had never recovered from her health, so she waved her hands to clear the chessboard. He got up and rubbed Yanj's hair to appease. Tomorrow, I'll accompany you for the next game." Yanj's hair was black and hard, and the Emperor Yuan repeatedly stumbled, and felt that the younger sister's cat felt better than a hair that could not speak. Yanj is a tree charm, and in simple terms, she is a tree demon. What the tree is afraid of is that all the leaves will fall when the wind blows. Although she has lived for thousands of years and has been detached from the tree, her nature is still there. As soon as Yuandi's hair was pinched, she felt that Yuandi had pinched the leaves of her tree, and her hair had been wiped out. Hey, are you stunned by the wood?" they uttered in time, pulling back the song that was going to be blackened from the mess, What the are you making, you are pleasant, not tree, are you afraid of him stinging? Cutting off his hand won't make you bald. Yan's stiff expression was shy in Yuwendi's eyes. He reluctantly frowned 2 more words of hair. His mind is getting stronger and stronger, he feels that after the ceremony, he should settle the matter with Yanj as soon as possible, sleep early and walk away. Yanj nodded behaviorally. If this guy didn't leave, she felt that she couldn't help it. Hemp eggs, in a minute, he wanted to wipe his hair down so that he could taste the baldness. The chicken opened its wings and fluttered its wings to appease the words, "Don't be afraid, be good, come to your baby's arms." The song that has always been poisonous in front of the chicken is extremely frustrated and grieved this time, "I hate people touching my head." The kind that can't stand it? Baby knows you're aggrieved. The cub knew the tree's pretentiousness, and he sneered and continued his elder song like an elder, "Come and come, baby will give you a hug of love." Yanji rolled her eyes and ignored the chicken, the nerve chicken. She was lying in bed by the palace person. This night Yanj had a terrible dream. She dreamed that the leaves of one of her trees had been wiped out. Since then she has become a bald tree. This dream is terrible, even more nightmares than nightmares. After Yanj awakened from the nightmare, she felt pained and felt that she would have to cut off Yuwendi's paw that had pinched her hair. The second day was Yuwendi's adult ceremony. He started to worship the ancestral temple from the dawn, and after dark, he greeted the envoys from all countries at the banquet. On this day, all the arrangements were full, and when the song ended, he himself was drunk. Way back. The palace person asked him where to go. He sat on the chin, staring blankly with open eyes. Where to go? After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 15. Yan Ji's black hair appeared in Yuwendi's mind, and he heard his erratic and unreal voice, "Go to Zhongzheng Hall." Zhongzhendian is the place where he handles government affairs, and it is also the place where he stays to leave messages. At first she was in a coma, and Yuwendi thought about Yanj living in the Zhongzheng Hall so that he could take care of her after handling the affairs. Later she was sober, and he had no plans to move her to another palace. After all, government affairs are cumbersome, and when she was upset, she talked to her, and even glanced at her, she felt that many discomforts could disappear. He wanted to wait until she would let her volunteer in the future, but today, sitting on the high hall, watching the colorful banquet, everyone was happy or rejoicing in the face, he suddenly became interested. He didn't want to wait, tonight, he wanted to hug her to sleep. It was midnight and he was half drunk and awoken to the Zhongzheng temple. She thought she was asleep. She didn't expect that she was wearing a smoke green men's clothing, her hair was with a gold crown, and she sat on the couch and played with her left and right hands. Is waiting for him to arrive. He waved the palace man and reached for the curtain. The sound of the bead curtain collision she was startled by the words, and she turned her head and smiled at him. I know that Her Majesty, who is bound to drink today, has made the palace person prepare a sober soup for Her Majesty, and His Majesty have a drink. Yuwendi didn't say anything, he fixed his eyes on the woman in front of him. Wearing a men's clothing, she looked beautiful and seductive. The candle light at the table flickered, and the warm yellow light softened her eyebrows, making him look charming from her face. His Majesty. Yan Ji saw Yuwendi stayed still, raised his hangover soup in his hands and raised him, Your Majesty, it's not good to be drunk. Drink some hangover soup. Her voice was clear and low alcoholic, and every word was lingering in his ears, reminding him suddenly of the wine he drank today. Is he drunk? A few steps came to her. Instead of picking up the wine in her hand, he bent down slightly and held her in his arms. The sober soup fell to the ground in her hand and made a light noise. Your Majesty, she looked up in surprise, her eyes panicked and helpless. He ignored her struggle, held her tighter, lowered his head, and kissed her lips. He thought he should be really drunk. The tip of his tongue still had the taste of wine. He entered her sweet mouth, her sweet aroma, and slowly echoed in his lips and teeth, which made him addicted, intoxicated, and shouted with blood. Rub her into his flesh. He held her tightly in his arms, walked on the bed a few steps, and lay down together. Pain. She suddenly covered her chest injury, showing pain. The red blood had been pierced from her chest, and Yuandi's uneasy mood was finally sobered by the blood. Called the medical girl quickly. When the toss was over, the two looked at each other, both awkward and helpless. It was Yuandi who said, "I was just reckless." Yanj heard that she didn't speak, but put on her clothes again. She got up and got out of bed and motioned to the palace person to put on her shoes. She looked up and asked him, "Can you leave the palace now?" Yuandi thought for a moment that it was annoying to leave the palace. Yanj added, "I lost to His Majesty yesterday. Naturally, I have to talk and give my next birthday gift. If His Majesty can go out tonight, how about taking me to a good place?" Yuandi's heart was ups and downs in an instant. At the end, he was full of joy. He said, "You can go out of the palace. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again." Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 16. During this time in Beijing, the investigation was extremely strict. Yuandi himself was not afraid, but the injury of Yanj was not good. "Your injury has just been cracked and it is not suitable for going out. Let's sleep well tonight." Yanj pulled his sleeve. "I've waited for the next day, but I just walked out of the palace. It doesn't matter what your personal safety is, and my injuries don't matter. I have so many injuries, not as bad as this. No matter how well you are healing, Your Majesty should not worry about it." Yuandi just drank the hangover soup and was already sober. And he is really happy today. After the ceremony, after all, those ministers who excuse him to control the court, even if they are unwilling, have to return their rights to him. It can also be said that people are refreshed at every happy event, so after listening to the words, they decided to go out of the palace. He was very curious, where did Song Song take him? Yanj's chest was injured, so Yuandi was very low-key, and pulled him out of the palace with Yanj in a pony cart. He and Yanj were crowded in a carriage together, and although the space was exacerbated, both people didn't care about it. Yuandi found that even if he was next to Yanj, Yanj didn't seem to respond. At first, he thought Yanj was shy, but later, after observing it, he gradually realized that Yanj might be treating her as a man. Two men leaning together didn't seem to matter. This recognition made Yuandi feel terrible. So he tentatively said to Yanj, "Before you were drunk, you don't care. Ordinary women don't care about this. The partial language song is not that ordinary. As long as Yuandi does not pinch her hair, even if the two sleep, she will not care." Therefore, the Emperor Chao Yuan, who understood very well, smiled, "Your Majesty doesn't need to care, I don't take it seriously." When the dog took a bite, she swallowed it back in time. But even if he didn't hear the second half of the sentence, Yuandi's face turned black instantly. Is it that he is not good at technology? He has some messy reflections, or maybe the words don't understand the beauty of men and women. Thinking of the beauty of men and women, Yuandi also felt that there was nothing wonderful about this matter, just like hungry to eat, thirsty and drink water, and then things became numb after a long time. However, as a woman, this kind of thing has to be paid more attention, so Yuandi coughed and said very gently, "In the future, if you are unwell, you can tell me." Yan Ji tilted his head to look at him, and did not understand how a man like Yuandi struggled with such small things. "It's okay. What does it mean?" Yuandi wanted to ask, but he didn't know where to ask, but he was panicked. The sedan chair turned upside down. Yuandi pulled Yan Ji's hand by this moment. Is it okay? Yan shook his head. It's alright. Yuandi had no intention of letting go, so he held Yan's hand all the way. He was thinking with some jealousy, that Yanj did not refuse. Does it mean that Yanj also feels a lot to him? Although Yanj's palm had sword cocoons, she was a woman in the end. Her fingers were long and her hands were very small. Because of her martial arts, her palms were hot. Sweated. Yan Song, Your Majesty, are you hot? Emperor Yuan, out of the palace, just call me. Oh, Yanj said, I pray, brother, do you hold my hand hot? He suddenly felt that his words came out of her mouth, and they were so nice. He replied a little bit, a bit. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 17. Why not let go? Pull you this way, lest the bump of the sedan will make you hit the window. What this said made the words so speechless. Yanj stopped the carriage on a night street. Today is the day when the emperor's adult celebrates with all people. If it is normal, there will be no people in this place, but tonight the streets are still lit with lights, the crowd is surging, and the wave of dragon dance is a wave of acrobatics. Yuandi didn't expect it to be so late, and the capital city would be so lively. He looked around with a little surprise and curiosity. When two people walked in the crowd, Yuandi could hold Yanj's hand more firmly and more openly. This is the nightless street in Beijing, Yanj and Yuandija said. I asked when I came to Beijing. The second elder brother of the tavern strongly recommended me to come here, saying that the day of His Majesty's ceremony was all over the world. When Night Street arrives, various programs will be staged. It will be lively for 3 days and 3 nights. I was thinking about coming here to play for 3 days and 3 nights. I did not expect to be absent on the first day. Listening to the regrets and dissatisfaction in her words, Yuandi smiled and comforted, we will come again tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Yan Ji didn't answer, and she dragged Yuandi around the shops on the street and bought many novelty items. A small vendor said to be a red copper coin pendant that was opened. It was very cheap, but everyone bought it well, and Yanj also bought 2. She wore one, stomped, and wore one for Yuandi. It's safe. Many people around me wear this one and say that they can make themselves safe. Yuandi made no comment about this, but he saw no dissent when Yanj looked solemn. Probably because of the emperor's birthday, many street props sold were birthday gifts, including hats, belts, cloaks, and masks. The set of gadgets are very novel and dazzling. Unconsciously, the whole street is gone. The 2 river lanterns bought at the stall at the end of the street, Yan Ji first handed the pen to Yuandi. Today is your birthday. You should make a wish better than anyone. Make a good wish. Yuandi raised his eyebrows. He didn't believe this so-called wish. With this skill, he might as well achieve his wish by himself. But seeing Yan Ji's expression of anticipation excited, he reached out, took the pen from her fair and slender hand, and seriously wrote the wish on the paper. What's your wish? The 2 were very close together, and he slightly tilted his head, feeling that his breath seemed to be on her face, and the hair between her foreheads was slightly because of the breeze or his breath as he floated. He reached out and pinched her strand of hair at his fingertips. Confronting her doubtful gaze, he slowly helped her pinch her hair behind her ears. The fingertips seemed to have the touch of hair passing over his fingers. The fingertips under his sleeves touched together, and so was the staying power of the wine. At this moment, I suddenly wanted to hold her in my arms. Yan Ji was ignorant about this. She took the pen and wrote her wish on a piece of paper and put it in the river lantern. She was the first to walk towards the river with interest. After taking a few steps, I realized that Yuandi was still in place, and turned his head to wave at him, follow me carefully, be careful to be scattered. Only then did Emperor Yuan reflect his disability, and he kept up with Yanj a few steps, holding the river lantern in one hand, and holding Yanj's hand with the other hand. "What wish did you make?" She didn't answer. She knelt down beside the river and looked at the river lantern with seriousness and solemnity. She folded her hands and closed her eyes and muttered silently, about praying to heaven. She was erect, with a reverent face, and the lights of the river were like twinkling stars, and the warm yellow light was soaked in her body. She knelt there, and the light of her body reflected her like dust. Emperor Yuan looked at her like this, looking at the idiot for a moment, and the noise around him seemed to stagnate at this moment, leaving her alone in his eyes. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 18. It took a long time for Yanj to open her eyes, and she looked forward to the river lantern that belonged to her. Until the river lanterns went away, she retracted her eyes and stood up and asked Yuandi, "What did you just say?" He looked into her bright starry eyes, and his voice was dumb. "What wish?" When she heard her smile and frown, she had a little girl's beauty. "Can't say it, it won't work out." Yuandi squeezed her hand tightly and moved her throat, but didn't ask again. Just when the river lantern was put into the water by him, he already made a gesture to the dark guard in the dark. What wish she has, there is no need to make a wish. If he is there, he will help her accomplish it. The entire river is a river of lights, as bright as the flowing stars, but she stood here, radiant around him, making his eyes only follow her. She is more dazzling than the stars. Yanj seemed to think of something. He broke his hand and bent over to pull out a small and delicate dagger from the sole of the shoe and placed it in his palm. "I wanted to buy something for you, but I didn't like it when I looked around. This dagger, do NT look down on it? It's very practical when playing against people. In fact, you may not use it as your identity. However, I can only give you this. You can take it away and throw it away. But you must not refuse now." When she entered the palace, the body was exhausted by the palace people. Yuandi did not expect that she had hidden a dagger under the boots. He could not laugh or cry for a while, but he seemed warm to her coy expression. In agitating, he tightened his dagger and said softly, "Okay, I accept it." She gave him his life-saving dagger capital, and even if he refused, he was worried that she didn't have anything close to her, but now she doesn't need a dagger in the palace, and he will give her a better substitute next day. Someone yelled at guessing lantern riddles. She ran forward a few steps and turned around those lanterns. At this time, the crowd was flowing. He looked from the crowd and saw her standing in front of a huge lantern and turned her head, staring at him and laughing. She smiled brightly, her eyes stared, and the spirit of her whole body flew like a halo, which made her lanterns eclipse. He looked at her so dazzling for a moment. A child bumped into his body at this moment. He was busy lowering his head to help the child. The mother of the child apologized to him again and again. Sushi rejoiced. He looked at these people around, and laughed unconsciously. He smiled to avoid the crowd and looked up again, but he could not find her. He busily walked around and looked around in front of the lantern that she had stood by. All eyes were full of people. Clearly she was so prominent in the crowd, but at this moment, he could not find it. The dark guard beside him stepped forward and said that she could not be found. He felt cold and chilling behind him. Everyone around him was laughing, but he was shaking all over. It was shaking with anger. She has good martial arts. He knows that even the dark guard hasn't followed her. It can be seen that she planned to leave early. She didn't want to stay in the palace, and didn't want to follow him, so she left like this. With that being so, why is she so indifferent? His heart was really cold, and the wind was blowing all around, only to feel the cold. He couldn't help but wonder, was she abducted? This thought made his angry, out of control rationality finally under control, and he ordered the dark guard to find her trace even if he turned the capital over. She is a living person, he doesn't believe she can just disappear. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 19. Yanj had already entered the Ming family's army on the second day and set out on the way to the border. The people in the Ming army have been with her for so many years. It was the first time she saw her run away. Everyone asked her jokingly, "Boss, are you going to be a little lover?" The look of the spring breeze is proud. This is to go which little widow's door? This trip was really smooth. Although Yanj was in a good mood, in the face of these guys, she still had a face of Yan Wang. She heard these guys and gave them a glance. "I had bought a few jars of the famous champion in Beijing. I want to give you a taste, but it seems better to keep it for myself." When everyone heard it, they suddenly lighted their eyes. "General, we didn't say anything just now. Your adults don't remember the villains." After a long journey, I passed by in the fun and jokes of everyone. At the border, I was thrown into battles of all sizes. In the autumn, people have a good grain harvest, and the barbarians also like to burn and plunder at this time to prepare their own winter grain. Like all the people, Yanj is attacking these barbarians every day. After destroying people several times in a row, it is about her fright that scared the barbarians. These guys haven't moved recently. The size of the army were relieved, and they all laughed at the barbarians who must have been frightened. However, the song knew that it was the barbarians that started to divide and broke up. After this civil unrest lasted for a month, a new barbarian leader was born, and the largest war in recent years would also begin. This month, Yanj secretly led his own army of Ming family soldiers disguised as businessmen, quickly rushing, and intended to collect a wave of grain and grass in the rich land of Jiangnan. In previous lives, in this protracted battle, because of the tension of the front line, there were more starved soldiers in the army than dead on the battlefield. Host Ming Lan didn't want this to happen again, and Yan Ji didn't want to see such a scene. She is a tree herself, and she doesn't like to use her head or hands. Most of the time, as long as the host wishes that she can simply complete it, she will not complicate things. This is the first time she has encountered a host such as Ming Lan, and it is also the first time that she has received a mission from a powerful person. It's never been possible for two tasks to overlap. Every day I was thinking about how to keep myself alive in this battle, and every day I was cursing the bird and beast that always eat her. Had it not been for the bird and the beast always eating her, she would not have gone this way. She has always been through and past, this time secretly determined that she must make herself strong and have the chance to meet that bird again in the future. Beast, she will treat her body with her own way, and swallow the guy into her belly without leaving it. Yan Ji thought that this time she took out all of Ming Yan's net worth, even if she didn't buy much grain, she should be able to catch the eye. However, I did not expect that a county in Jiangnan suffered a flood and the price of food doubled in one day. The food that Ming Lan bought for some money was really not enough. This is how to do. On the way back, I met robbers. Looking at these guys who didn't know Taishan, Yan Ji's mind was agitated and an idea suddenly came to mind. What kind of existence the Ming family army is, that is, the who meets the gods and kills the gods and the ghosts, even if there are not many people who follow Yanj this time, it is easy to level a robber's den. The food and money in the robber's den was brought into the car. Everyone was very interested in this profitable business, so they inquired about the next robber's den and went straight. The size of the mountain bandits this time is relatively large, and it is known to go far and wide to do evil. After discussing the song with the Ming army, she planned to go into the mountain bandits' nest to explore the mountain terrain first, and then combine the inside and the outside, and put these bandits together. After doing this big ticket, one party would be fine loaded and returned. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 20. Yan's son-in-law's men's clothes looked really handsome. Even the bandits saw her, but he couldn't keep his eyes off. Even if she was a man at the moment, she still carried her up the mountain and dedicated her to the man-like bandit leader. Going up the mountain, Yan Ji avoided the fate of being locked up because of her rare beauty. She was locked up in the gangster's chief's bedroom. The gangster saw that she was a weak scholar, and did not embarrass her, but threatened her not to go out or kill her. Oh, the bandit leader is not on the mountain. It seems that he also took a team of men to rob. Yanj waited for these people to leave. Rizuo turned out the window and not only turned the mountain around, but also tied a bandit. Under all kinds of torture, this guy made every trap and arrangement on the mountain clear. She found the schoolboy who went up the mountain with her and was also unconscious in the firewood room. The book boy was the thinnest guy in the Ming family. His nickname was Four Mothers. The nickname was because this guy was really shattered. Terrible. Bringing the map of the mountain to the fourth mother, and agreed on the offensive route of the inside and the outside, Yan Ji returned to the mountain gang leader's bedroom again. It was probably a big ticket. This night, the bandits held a wine and meat celebration party. When the bandits headed home, they were already drunk. When he saw the song in a chair, his eyes fluttered immediately. Yan Ji saw a few people outside the door, so he didn't stun the mountain bandit in the first place. Instead, he joked with his cat and mouse in the room for a while, and squeezed his neck. Pinch off. The knock sounded at this time. Yan Ji was surprised and dragged the body of the bandit leader to the bottom of the bed. Before she could open the door suddenly opened at this time. The candles in the room went out as soon as Yanj pinched the neck of the bandit's head. The song in the dark could not see who was coming, but thought it was a bandit, imitating the voice of the bandit leader, "Get out." Not only did the comber not get away, but he rushed in the voice of the words. The cold light of the dagger flashed in the darkness. Fortunately, the song was hidden in time, otherwise it would be killed by this man. She trembled in her heart for a while, not knowing whether this man was an enemy or a friend. She just evaded subconsciously. She took the medicine in the kitchen. Although the mountain bandits ate food and drink at night, although they were able to win the bid, there must be fish that leaked the net. When people are attacking, she wants to cut it quickly. I wanted to take out the dagger on the bottom of my feet, and I felt it empty when my hand was empty, and then she remembered that her dagger was sent to the emperor. Neither of them wanted to alarm outsiders. In the dark, they each acted silently, attacking each other with the most fierce moves, in order to make a quick decision. At a glance, I noticed that the bandits standing at the door had disappeared, and Yan Ji was agitated a little. Su was because of a slow step. His arm was pulled by this person. Voice, what's the meaning of AncientChina? The other party was clearly surprised. Song of Song. This sound is too familiar. Yan, this guy is Yuandi. Dignity Emperor, how come to the mountain bandit nest? Without waiting for the words to respond, Emperor Yuan eloquently asked, you are the leader of the bandit here? What about the scholar tied into your room today?